All right.
Woo!
All right.
Welcome to Trust the Journey, episode 1. I'm Melanie Curtis.
And I'm Jason Moletsky.
Our mission is to live, laugh, love, and learn together with you.
We're here to create conscious connections, to grow and contribute through our practice of openness, honesty, vulnerability, humility, and trust. Trusting the entire journey.
In this episode, we're talking about, ourselves. We will share some of our stories, backgrounds, why we were called to create this show, and what our goals are with it.
As always, if you get value from the show, please share whenever and however you're so inspired.
Thank you guys so much for being with us. Here we go, episode 1. What's up, my friend?
I just had the music at 10.
Perfect.
10, like at the height of a massive set where you might have like 20,000 people, like.
Yeah. To me, I'm like, that's when my Spinal Tap references come out of like, this one goes to 11.
Absolutely.
I love it.
That's my morning. Like I get up, I'm like, oatmeal coffee, play.
Amen.
Yeah.
Usually do some jumping jacks and pet Matil, definitely coffee. But yeah, I kind of like just jump into these things because I don't really like to prep a whole lot. I like to just keep it all real and just go.
Yep.
You know, so whatever we record, and if it's great, and if it's not, great too. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Yeah, cool. So just to give a little bit of an intro for people watching, Jay Moletsky. Welcome. Hello.
Hey, how you doing? Hey.
Melanie Curtis. Hi.
Hi, Mel.
Yeah, we basically came up with this idea of exploring some topics. It's funny, I'll read the list of what you wrote to me. Fear, choice, and decisions, religion, spirituality, and psychedelic drugs, reality, enlightenment, and consciousness, life after waking up. Now, we're not going to explore all that today, but our idea is to start sort of going into and expanding into these bigger topics and just having some discussions over a period of time. Is that fair? Is that what you're? Yeah.
Perfect. I like to dabble in each of those a little bit every day, but we'll talk about one thing at a time and see where it leads us. Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Perfect. And I think also to start this out, given it's going to be more like a series, I feel like it would be useful for people to, because if you're sharing this and they don't know me and I'm sharing this and they don't know you, it's like, let's hear your story. Like, give us some insight into how you found yourself on a growth path, which is what if I had to call it something, I would call it that, avoiding any cliche terminology, of course.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I feel like it was kind of shoved down my throat, it wasn't like I really had, you have two options, you're like shrivel up, die, accept the existence that's been laid out for you by society as the norm, which was written in all the books, or go do something different, and I felt like I was suffocating, dying and shriveling up in my, blue collar job and 9-to-5 existence as a young man and just wondering what the hell am I going to do? And I was fortunate enough to have a similar experience to yourself where I fell out of a plane and my life made a 90-degree turn on the spot. Like I didn't see it coming. I had no way to anticipate it. I really thought it was going to be ready, set, die.
Right.
I was kind of hoping. I was a miserable young guy, I was kind of going, what's up with this world? This world's doesn't have anything, And when the parachute opened, I thought, oh my God, I have something I really, really, really have to do, and it just immediately set the path out for me. So it meant a lot of sacrifice, a lot of debt initially to just lay the credit card down, borrow money, like give up everything that I was doing and like make the investment to, buy my first parachute and like go on my first trips and, get it. And it was terrifying. Oh my God, it was scary. I remember 50 jumps and my first out of country travel away to go on a skydiving vacation. And I wrote a will. before I was leaving.
Oh,
Oh yeah, I was petrified. I'm like, I'm never coming back. This is the dumbest thing I've ever done. I'm an idiot, you know, like absolutely, you know, like, oh,
amazing.
gut wrenching, right? And
Oh, so true. So
yeah,
real. So,
yeah,
so real. This is partly why I'm so called to helping young jumpers is that experience as a young jumper is so intense.
yeah, it's terrifying, you know. And I remember, you know, I came from a little small operation. I'm Canadian originally, you know, and I grew up a lot on my own. And there was up there at the time when I started jumping, the operations were very small. It's a family-run operation with a couple of small planes and a big red barn, you know, on a grass strip. So it's just a countryside location, you know, and you have this very, you know, small pond view of what this is because it's this little tiny operation. And then you come down somewhere in the States down to a great big, I went from 4 people jumping out of one tiny plane at one time to 232 people jumping out of like 13 planes at once. That was
Right.
direct contrast from one to the other. Like, I have no way I'm going to do this when I'm here. And so I think that really like cemented the path, you know, like when skydiving came into my life, it kind of put up the walls on either side and sent me down the channel of life that was ahead of me. But in a lot of ways that I kind of feel like it was always there inside, that there's always some level of knowing that you have a greater purpose, that you have something you have to achieve, that you know you can affect things, or you know that this isn't meant to just be, you know, another pawn in the chess game kind of thing. You know,
Totally.
if you go for it, it's there, right?
Mm-hmm. And I think that you point to something pretty important. I think that like it's hard to know. Like if people haven't had an experience of feeling purposeful or feeling drawn toward a path, you know what I mean? That it
sure.
can be difficult to have faith that that's there. Ironically, just to go back and forth, I hear that a lot, and I've seen that a lot, that people have the experience of I'm unhappy and then I find skydiving and I'm reborn and I'm sent down, because I think skydiving is, oh my God, this is going to be something we'll definitely explore, is definitely this rich platform for escalating personal growth and awakening, a spiritual awakening. But like, I think that initial love and purpose connected. So my story is that skydiving is in my family. My dad owned a small drop zone. Like, he's a pilot. So we had a grass strip behind our house, and he like met his BFF and opened a drop zone and was like, yeah, we're skydivers now. And I just was exposed to that at a young age. And so I did my first jump when I was 18. And for me, I didn't have the experience of, oh, I'm in some job and I'm gratuitously unhappy. I was a young kid of like, I'm 18 years old. I don't know anything about the world or myself really at this point in life. But I did have this visceral, of course, response. Like, I didn't even know it was happening to me. This is how I describe my first jump skydiving experience, is that I think it's not a fear of like injury. It's a fear of death. Like, you think you'll die.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know?
It's option 1 or 2, right?
Yeah.
You live or you die. Yeah.
And so when I landed and lived, and this is the thing that I only could really extract from my experience after the fact, is that when I landed and lived, a very important shift in my mind took place that day, of that things that I think are impossible are actually possible. And that the fear in my mind that's telling me I can't do something is absolutely, you know, bunk, you know, like, it's just not to be trusted. You know what I mean? I'm not saying be reckless and risk our physical safety such that we end up dying for real. I'm saying that fear is worth questioning. And so that I can easily see that as underpinning all of my life and sort of courageous choices.
You know, it brings me to a thought. There's one person you should never ever trust, and that's yourself.
Yeah.
You know, because you will lie to yourself, and you will
Yes.
try to convince yourself otherwise, and you. But the thing is, we're programmed to do that. Like we have this inherent DNA programming, which is designed to protect us.
Definitely.
And in a lot of ways, our biocomputer of this body that we live in, it immediately jumps out and says, don't do that. That's not good for you. And if you listen to it without first analyzing the bigger picture of all the elements involved, if you just take that advice, then you go whoop, and you agree with it and you shut the door and it's closed.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we do that all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Negative. I believe that's called negative bias, is that we are prone to the negative bias so that we protect ourselves, keep ourselves safe, which is great. It's just, if we think about it in terms of like humans and what's possible for us, it's different than what was possible for us before certain advances were made and yada, yada, yada. So like, obviously, like things change. So more becomes possible with the, advances that we make and yada, yada. I mean, that sounds kind of generic and boring, but you know what I mean? Like, so it's
totally true though. You're on the point.
Evolutionarily, like if we don't question it, we don't evolve. Go ahead.
So it's exactly like you're right. You're right on the point there, is that in the species evolution chain, right? Like the animal the one in the flock or the herd that makes the change to adapt to its environment is the one that survives, right? And the ones that continue to act in the way that they have always acted are the ones that fall back. But this is nature's natural selection going ahead and filtering out the gene pool to make sure that the ones that are continually adapting are the ones that continually making it. And that's part of what we have to do as well, is to face these things before us that we're unsure of, and take the risks. I think that drives this, the bigger picture of what we're talking about is it comes back to fear and risk taking and risk management and all these pieces, and learning to trust your instinct rather than your fear.
Yeah. So Jay, tell us more. Oh, sorry, my internet went weird. Tell us more about your skydiving story. So that was your beginning younger years of passion. And then obviously you went on to a major career in the sport of skydiving. Tell us more about that and sort of where you're headed now.
Well, at some point I decided that I had had enough with my blue collar life, and I was going to pull the pin and do what we call cut away, right? I'm going to let go of my previous idea of existence, and I'm going to go and make skydiving my full-time life. And I did it in a moderately elegant way. I packed up a van and headed south, and started the process. And when
in a van down by the river,
totally, it's so iconic and it's ironic at the same time.
Right, totally.
I still have a van. Don't get it wrong.
Totally.
But it meant getting through a lot of phases, right? Like, I left with a good nest egg that I had put aside for the mission. I'm like, I'm going to go do this. And that dwindled down until it's gone. And then having to learn to adapt and find my way through an industry or a sport, a lifestyle, and, it brought me, I kind of just dabbled around and tried a little bit of everything. So there's all the different venues. You can become an instructor, or you can become a rigger, or you can work in industry, or you can work in an office, or you can be a videographer. I did everything, right? I like to do just about everything. I like trying things. My big question is always why, why, how, when. Like, I like these questions of learn that teach me things.
Yeah.
And, it meant eventually I found myself in a niche in the sport that I really love, which was canopy piloting. Mm-hmm. And I found that I loved it because I could do it on my own. I had been on many teams before that point, and I struggled with the team environment because I like to push myself at my level as hard as I want to, and not feel bad if I push too hard or not enough. And the relationship with other people wasn't something I was looking for at the time.
Sure.
And ironically, I ended up on a team doing canopy piloting, which was, the irony of the universe. The universe loves irony, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's comical.
So, I spent my adult life, 30 to 40 was spent pursuing this career and becoming a world champion at canopy piloting many times over, and, you know, racking up a stack of accomplishments to go with it, and building a educational business out of it. A company called Flight One teaches people how to fly parachutes in all aspects. And it's been a hell of a ride. And, you know, it's brought me to now I'm the guy who I remember looking at from the younger point of view. You know, I remember being 5 or 10 years in and looking at the guy who's 20, 25 years in, and seeing their maturity and seeing their state of comfort and how relaxed they are, and how they're not easily wavered by anything that happens, you know, and it's just all water off their back. And, you know, and it feels good to be at this point in my life. Like, I'm really happy. I'm going to be 45 here in the near future, and I'm pretty stoked about it.
Nice.
Maybe the
I just
happiest.
turned 40.
Yeah, it's great, eh?
I'm in the club.
Yeah. Honestly, I thought 20 was awesome until I turned 30, and I'm like, 30 is way better than 40. Than 20, you know, and then when I got to 40, I'm like, oh, this is where it's at. It hurts more. It's harder to do stuff, you know, it takes longer to recover. But my friends are so much cooler.
My friends are so much cooler.
Yeah, everybody's way more level, and it's just easier to be with people, and or you just say bye, you know. See ya. You don't feel bad about it.
You want to talk on Zoom for a bunch of sessions and see what comes up so we can help people? Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah, totally. So tell me more about you, because we really don't know each other that much.
I know, it's so funny. It's amazing how skydiving does that. You cross paths and have shared experiences and shared relationships and touch points of life. But then, you know, unless you sit down and actually share stories, you don't know. You just have the skydiving touch points.
I had no idea you were a second generation jumper. I had no clue.
Yeah, well, my dad's a pilot, so he's gone skydiving, but he's not a skydiver.
Okay.
So I'm sort of, I mean, I do consider it sort of second generation, even though, you know, it's not that, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But I feel super deeply grateful for that, because I hear stories all the time of how people are exposed to skydiving at a later age when they have money and this and that. And I'm just grateful because of what I said before, I can see so clearly in retrospect how skydiving has allowed me to make such courageous choices. And that takes me back to part of my story of where I ended up. So out of college, so I went to college, I went to Middlebury College in Vermont, and did the whole standard path of getting an education. And, you know, I moved to New York City after college and worked for an investment bank. And I love New York City. I actually live outside of New York City now. I've since moved back here, and New York is one of my favorite places in the entire world. So I'm psyched to be back here now. But after college, I had no money. I really wanted to skydive, of course. And you can't really have a car in New York. So I fucking, no joke, looked into, before Facebook existed, I looked up the ranch, and they had this Facebook, right? The Ranch Roundup, which was a printed book of people's like picture and their phone numbers and stuff. Cool. So I went through and I called every name on that list that lived in New York City that had like a 212 number that listed New York as their address. I'm like, okay, maybe someone can give me a ride to the drop zone, right? So I call, and I don't know, like the third or fourth person I called was my friend Stephen Baker. I don't know if you know him, but he answered. He's one of my best friends to this day. He answered the phone. He's like, well, I'm already up here, but you know, if you take a bus and a train and this and that, and I'll pick you up at the station. And I was like, okay, you know, do it. So that was like the level of my passion out of college. I was like, finally, I have some money. I can finally do some jumps per my own volition. And then fast forward, I couldn't do as many jumps as I wanted in the Northeast. And I ended up luckily transferring with my investment banking job out to Los Angeles. And I finally I had a car and I had a lot more money, and I spent it all on skydiving, getting good at skydiving. As you do.
Yep.
So my whole path was doing 4-way formation skydiving. I was just a complete addict in terms of that. So I did that for many years. I ended up doing, you know, the VFS formation skydiving because again, the growth mindedness really prevails through my skydiving career. So I did all sorts of free fall competition. And I even did one canopy piloting nationals. I don't know if you remember that.
I remember. Yeah, I remember.
One of my favorite experiences in skydiving. And yeah, so I don't know. I could ramble on and on about my skydiving story, but I've always, one of the greatest accomplishments that I feel, or one of the greatest things I feel about my skydiving career is that I feel like I am a positive leader in the sport, that I do and can help people and younger people feel included in a community that they really want to be a part of. Like, you know what I mean? Like back when we were young, when you're like looking up at the guy going, oh God, he's so comfortable and mature and chill and whatever. I want to be like him. I wish he would like me. You know what I mean? Like
Totally.
I like wielding that power for good, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. You know, the lessons that have come along have been so profound, you know, and I've struggled a lot, you know, because I've always felt like skydiving is a very frivolous endeavor, right? I mean, it's very selfish, it's very wasteful, it's very damaging. There's a lot of things that come along with it that are just not positives, you know. When
Yeah.
you look at them in isolation, when you break it up into its pieces, I'm like, I don't feel good about like just doing something that I enjoy all the time, and you know, maybe leaves a carbon footprint, or like I'm just blowing my days off doing something like surfing or like whatever, you know, where you're just doing whatever. It doesn't, you know, I'm not out helping people per se by the
Right.
typical definition, you know.
Right.
And like you know, working in a hospital or something where you're directly hands-on servitude caregiver,
Right.
but at the same time, I get it. I mean, it's been happening for a long time, is that I get daily messages from people that say, thank you, that say, here's how I'm at right now. Maybe you could give me some advice and, you know, direction. And I know as a young man, a very lost young man, that when I was wandering around with no clue what to do with my life and how I could feel fulfilled, that the words that came from those more mature men and women in my life that I happen across, it gave me guidance. It gave me role models. It gave me real life heroes. This is like,
Yeah.
I've learned, keep your heroes at arm's length. You know, if you really want a hero to have their truest value, don't get to know them too well,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Because
Fair.
everybody has their imperfections, right? Everybody
Humanity.
has
Yeah,
they're real, you know. We all make
totally.
mistakes, we all do dumb stuff, we all
Totally.
leak, right? and
Yes.
and so if you want somebody to be a true role model for yourself, don't get too close to them, because you'll find out about their weaknesses and it'll take away some of that, like that glory, right? But what I've found inside of this life is that the role models that I've come across, the, you know, the Dan BCs, the Pete Allens, the Craig Gerrards, the people that just exemplify positivity and openness and direct honesty and all the characteristics that really shine, that you look for in a role model, those are incredibly real, available, accessible, real life traits, you know.
Yes.
It's so powerful. And
Yes.
I feel grateful for having had this come to me, to learn from those people around me and to have the experiences to make my mistakes, you know, and
Yep.
keep growing because of it, you know?
Oh my God, absolutely. It's so funny. It makes me, I echo literally everything you just said about values and the accessibility of it. That's one of the things I thought was so cool about skydiving too, is that you can actually get coaching from the fucking best in the world. You
Yeah.
can get to know them and they are willing to get to know you and help you. It's so funny. It makes me want to almost share my Craig Gerrard story, which I wrote about years ago.
Let's hear it.
Like, because I laugh because, and Craig knows this. He's heard me tell this story more than once. And I wrote a column about it. I write for Blue Skies Magazine. I'll post it with this when we share it. But it was my first nationals in 2002. And Craig Gerrard, if you guys, if people are watching this don't know who this is like one of the most,
Chicago.
Yeah, Skydive Chicago,
Yes.
one of the most decorated, you know, skydivers in the world. And as Jay said, like so amazing, just such a great guy. And I'm this young brand new, completely obsessed with four-way person. And Nationals also has this party element to it. So we're all drinking. It's sort of the after the competition is over, we're having a, you know, one of those party nights, and I'm young and I meet Craig, and oh my God, I'm like, it's so embarrassing, but so telling about it is that I'm like, you know, I meet him and I'm so excited, like genuinely, positively. I'm not nervous because I've got the fucking liquid courage going on, which is a whole nother conversation too. But I go, I go, Craig, sorry. I go, Craig, I'm going to butcher this now that I'm telling the story, but I said something basically like, you know, like, I'm going to be awesome. People are going to know me like they know you. Like, seriously, like, are you fucking for real, Curtis? 2002, like 400 jumps, you know, and it sounds such like an egotistical share. And I didn't mean it like that, but that's so how it came across. So I say, you know, Craig, I'm going to be awesome. People are going to know me like they know you. And he goes, Mel, we're going to have to work on this confidence problem.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God. And it's so funny because it really wasn't about like people knowing me. That doesn't really inspire me at all. It's more about like that inspiration from achievement and pushing the envelope. And it very much was in my youthful sort of lack of awareness. It was still underpinned by this growth and like pushing of the boundaries of what we can do.
That's hilarious.
So
it's such a Craig
funny
thing to say too. Yeah.
We're going to have to work on this confidence problem. I'm like, oh my God, so embarrassing. Oh. Yeah. So, I mean, so now you've achieved all this stuff and you're basically a complete, you know, you've achieved pretty, you know, the highest levels in your sport. Like, what are you working on now? Like, what are you going toward now?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, like I definitely feel like inside of the skydiving and the base jumping environment where, you know, parachuting, I've run my course for achieving most of what I wanted to do and a lot more than I ever planned to do, tons more than I ever planned. Yeah. And now I see I've stepped away from skydiving all the time. I didn't make a skydive last year. It was my first year without a jump, and I made some base jumps, but no more skydives. And I'm working daily on music. It's every single day, man. Literally like pouring my coffee and pushing play and starting on a process that I at least practice every day, usually multiple times a day. Every single moment of availability, I'm like diverting to musical practice and starting that path ahead. And, you know, one of the things there that's interesting for me is that inside of the house music, techno music is kind of my flavor of genre that I really find. It's electronic music, you know. Mm-hmm. The people are very similarly real and very similarly humble in a lot of ways. And of course you have your standouts, you know, that are always full of themselves in any environment. But what I've found is that when I've had the chance to encounter some of the best in the world and people that I idolize for their gift, for their talent, they practice their asses off. It's not
absolutely.
Yeah. So when I've met them, they've been super cool, very real, very easy to talk to, and very direct and welcoming. And I've seen the similarities in that environment. And it has a lot to do with the bigger picture. Like I come out of skydiving and I'm wondering, I'm like, what else can I do? I guess a good way to kind of bring this to a more direct answer. I was on the Appalachian Trail in 2012. I walked the trail with my wife from end to end. We did the whole thing through hike, right? It's a 2,200 mile walk.
Amazing.
And it was a fantastic life experience, something I'd always wanted to do. And we were in North Carolina, and we were staying at this historical home, and we had the guy who hosts the hikers there. He does so on a regular basis, opens up the home for a small fee as like a hostel, but it's a beautiful, like historic Victorian home that's been retained in all it. It's got a music room and a library and all the classic fittings, you know, and furnishings. And we sit around this dinner that he prepares, and then he gets everybody to go around the table and talk about their lives. And, you know, I'm the whimsical, like, hippie dreamer vision guy, you know, that just does whatever. And he comes to me, oh, what's the thing you're going to be doing after your trail? And I'm like, I don't know, I want to do something with oneness.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like the best I can sum it up as, is I want to make, I know that we're all part of one thing. We're all one big piece in the end. And so however I can create unity, and emotionally, energetically, spiritually, I look around and I look at the times in my life where I felt connected with other people, where I feel that bond and that like security and that trust and that love and openness. And when do those times come? You know, and they come in times of celebration, and they come in times of challenge, and they comes in times of grief, right? And when we find ourselves bond together. And what I want to do is share the experience that I've had with others, that I had for myself with others. One day, when the time when I actually felt the music enter my body and started learning, oh my God, like this energy takes over, and I lose myself in this experience. And the people around me are also part of this wave of energy and celebration and love and just present. You know, it's this presence, and it's about overcoming the fear of being observed, being free, you know? And so it's this guidance of having the environment where it's safe to be yourself. It's safe to be whatever you might not even know you are or want to be, and not to be judged for it, and to be expressive and respectful. And I just want to keep moving down this path of like developing self-awareness and creating a space for others to do so.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so huge. I love that. I mean, I think just even speaking that into the world is inspiring, because it's like, well, what is that? How does that look? You know, like, what is it that means for you specifically and me specifically? And how awesome is it that you are like making the space for that to occur for yourself and others, like feeling free. And
it's challenging, right? I've been coming up with ideas. I'm like, well, maybe we can get some land and build a place like a, you know, commune or a retreat, or we could start to do tours and do events, and coming up with idea after idea. And it's very challenging. You know, it's an incredibly hard thing to quantify, because our world isn't set up for this.
Exactly. It made me think instantly of the system. Like if we go back to your original story of like, oh, I'm in the system, I have a job, I'm unfulfilled, I'm making money, I'm a cog in the whole big thing, in the predetermined, decided upon system.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it certainly makes sense that when people are trying to do something outside of that it would potentially, I mean, maybe not always. I don't, you know, it's funny. I never like to speak in absolutes. You know what I mean? Like it's like that open space of guessing there would be resistance to that. You know, it's funny. It makes me think of like what I do as a coach, as a life coach, it's a similar thing. It's like creating, it's a conversational space, you know what I mean? But it's a relationship, a connection where those same feelings can be born. You know, like, how is it that we can actually feel safe enough and free enough to explore our deep pain points, you know, or our most like connected, biggest dreams? Like, that is a very vulnerable place. And it's it feels very similar. Like it's almost to me like the same thing as creating a space musically and communally for people to feel free and self-expressed physically in that way. It's almost like in the modality of the way I do it for people, or try to, you know, is creating that space of complete non-judgment where there's genuine support and safety to explore those things, whatever they look like.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I feel like we're approaching without a guidebook, you know,
Right.
like I don't, as I've looked around for examples, I haven't been extremely happy with what I've found as far as the stereotypical offerings, and not to belittle them in any way, because there's
Yeah.
some very powerful work being done out there by lots of people who are putting their heart and soul into making safe places for people. And
Yeah.
I just found that for me, a lot of the traditional environments didn't necessarily, I didn't have them accessible, or they didn't give me the safety feeling, like that, like
Right.
emotional opening, where I would even feel kind of more closed a little bit when it comes to like sitting in a circle with a bunch of people I don't know and like talking
Right.
about my problems kind of thing, you know. I'd be like,
Yeah.
I don't think so, you know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
it's not
Totally.
really getting it for me. um I think a lot of it is that we're looking for kind of that more organic occurrences in life, where you want to go ahead and have your own flow and your own pattern, your own, you know, inconsistencies and consistencies, and find the ways that we find others, find our flock, our tribe, you know, and figure out where there's other people around us who are also going through the same things, or wishing for the same things, looking for the same. And bless the internet. Oh my God. Thank you for the internet. It's one of the best things in the world, because when I first started to learn about the internet, I was like, this could save us. This could be it. This could
Oh,
be the connectivity. It can be the bridge between all of us, because here we are sitting in our cave, you know, isolated by ourselves in our modern caves, these rooms that we build for ourselves,
right.
thinking that we're all just one little individual, but really we're just like a cell in a body where
Yeah.
each one of us has a role to play, and we're all connected, you know.
Yeah. I mean, that's big. That's big stuff. It's funny. Like I, it's such a, like I think about myself when I've had experiences like last year, not this year, but last year when we had the One Love New Year's Eve party. That was awesome. You know, and I think to myself, part of what I'm doing right now is like, I don't know if you know this, but I have not been drinking for almost a year, which I actually am pretty psyched about.
It's very good.
Just because it was something I wanted to explore for myself in terms of that life experience, and and how do I access, you know, like, because I know that people, and again, that's a bigger subject that I'm still very much learning about. I in no way feel like an expert on any of that. Just to share it as something I'm doing for myself as a chosen experience to go, well, how do I access those freedom, those feelings of contentment? And it's not like I never have been a big drinker, but I just more point to it as a way that we can, people do, and we can, and I have in the past, removed sort of like some of the fear, you know, and sort of calmed the anxious mind and stuff like that. Is that I like that I'm now learning how to do that without influence. So that feels pretty cool. Like that party. So I bring it back to the party. Is it like, I pretty much was just there, and I remember dancing like you were spinning, and I went up and I was just kind of dancing next to you, looking out at everybody. And it was beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's great, you know. I'm also sober for about 5 months now. I decided to
Cool.
and this is not a new thing for me. One thing I learned a long time ago, I had a life experience that came to me where I fell in love with somebody who had been through very traumatic experiences with alcoholism. And I
Mm-hmm.
decided, although I didn't have a problem with alcohol at the time, to put it on the side, to just
Sure.
remove it from our lives, so that it wasn't a part of our day. And I went 7 years without a drink, and that was from
Wow.
my like 25 to 32, a very young
Wow.
time, which Yeah, and I loved it. I felt like, wow, I really know what's going on to be staying away from this intoxicant, which
Right.
does have a toxicity to it, right?
Right. Yeah.
And and then it came and went through my life at times. And but whenever I trained for a championship, I always stopped drinking months
Yeah.
and months in ahead. 6 months before competition, no more
Yeah.
drinking.
That was
And
my first experience stopping drinking too, is
yeah,
I've only had one other experience in life where I stopped for like 8 months or something, but it was when I first started doing serious four-way.
yeah. If you want to be truly focused, you have to get the clarity that comes with that. And the body is a biochemical computer. It
Yeah.
operates off of what you put into it. And so if you want the one that runs fast and sharp and clean, you got to give it really good stuff.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't be slowing it down. Um, but
Yeah.
you know, I was actually just thinking about. I've been looking at a lot of the pictures from that event, the One Love party that you mentioned, and it was very conscious oriented. Like when we decided to host this event, there's a lot of pre-thought about the intention, like why. I'm
Right.
over throwing a party. I don't want to
Totally.
throw a party
Agreed.
for people to lower their self, to a point of, inebriation, intoxication, you know,
Agreed.
becoming explicit in ways they're not attractive, they're not appealing, they're not enlightening, they're not opening, sharing, expressing, interactive.
Yeah.
If I'm going to organize an event or be part of something, I want it to have a clear intention towards being safe environment, an uplifting experience. I want it to be about freedom of expression. I want it to be about non-judgment. I want it to be about care and consideration and respect for others, about being there for each other when needed, to be like, somebody's feeling a little bit bad, just maybe they're having an emotionally hard time, then support them, include them,
Absolutely.
love them,
Yes.
hold them if they want to be held, or don't touch them if they don't want to be touched,
Hmm.
and give that safe space. Along with that, it comes with an awareness of what are the things that you're sharing. And what I've learned a lot about recently with myself is making the decisions in the last couple of years to move more and more and more towards playing music as my full-time. What I'm doing with my life is, well, I'm aware very clearly that when I send out a frequency through a set of loudspeakers, the PA system, that I am affecting the center, right?
Wait,
Like
say that
there
again.
are,
The internet cut out. Say that again. When you
I,
send it out through the speakers, what happens?
I get to affect people directly through their emotional center.
Yeah.
So they're opening up their emotional selves to participate in an event of celebration. And music is a very, very powerful tool. And
Yes.
you can create an emotional response of all different types. You can get people raging and angry, or you can bring people to tears and crying, or you can bring people to points of celebration. And it's all based on the frequency and the lyrics and the things that are involved. And so my knowing this and having experienced all different levels, I've been to the bloody knuckle, mosh pit, and been
Yeah.
very angry. And I've been to the folk music or the orchestra, I've been to the all night raging dance party. I've been to the huge festival, and
Right.
I, I pick a track or a song or a sample or even just a sound,
Yep.
just a particular wave, and I go, what is that spurring in me? What is it spurring in my audience? And what do they feel as a result of it? Is it creating connection and rising us as a group? Or is this directing frustration or anger or whatever? And, you know, to me, music's the tool of music is it should stir up emotion. It should help bring the things that are buried out into the light, and
Yeah.
it should let us be free of them, right?
Yeah.
Like this is the point, is it's like you should just shake it until it starts to feel it, and you're like, oh, this needs out, and you let it out through expression of dance, or
Yes.
sitting and talking with somebody off on the sideline somewhere,
Totally.
and I know that my job as the one who is picking the music that I play and the other people that I might bring to share in this expression is to guide the journey, you know, and maybe we'll take it to some places that are, you know, not the easiest ride all the time. And I want there to be tension. I want it to be a little painful. I want it to be celebrative. I want it
Yeah.
to be a little lost at times. And I want it to be
Yeah.
directly on course at others, you know? So
Yes.
it should have this intentional experience to it. And it's not just a collection of, you know, song after song after song.
Yeah. No, I love that. And what I think is so awesome about it is that in sharing it is that people will hear you sharing it and say, okay, yeah, like that's something, those are things that I believe in and want to be a part of. Oh, wow. Look at this other person that I respect and who is willing to stand for. And wow, look at him taking his experience of true like fierce purpose in skydiving and actually now consciously redirecting it in a new way now in your life. Like that's so cool. It's so interesting. We talked about this. I have this skydiving group. We talked about it last night about this idea, like how the professional skydiving experience can be really put on a pedestal, the living the dream thing, and how it just looks like it's all rainbows and fucking puppy dogs and it's just bliss all the time. And of course it is bliss in lots of ways, and that like living your dream is like an experience I would and I think that's just a too cliche even to say, but like to follow and live in alignment with something you are called from your heart to do, from your core and gut or intuition or whatever it is that you identify with, whatever language works for you. Like that's what I feel like I'm seeing in what you describe. Like I took 2 years off from skydiving because I was breaking down in life. So my 2 years off was not because I was like, oh, I'm kind of done with this. I don't feel like that, but like, it's more like, and I'm not saying that you said that either. I took 2 years off because I had some fear. I had personal breakdown, and I was burned out from traveling and being a pro. And so, which is a very rigorous traveling lifestyle, as you obviously know. So I took 2 years off and like sort of recollected my life and myself and got really, and actually finally experienced myself as someone without skydiving. Like, what was that like? Who is that person?
Tell me
I don't
about it.
know.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know who that is. You know what I mean? So that was really freeing for me in the sense that I was able to find deep gratitude for skydiving and also release the fear of moving past it if I ever so chose. You know what I mean? And it's not even to say that it's gone from my life or whatever. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that there was a big part of me that was really afraid to pursue something like you're talking about with vigor beyond what was a very safe achievement level in an area. And so that is so courageous. I just want to acknowledge you for that, because I think that is such an inspiring thing for anybody in a situation where they're like maybe feeling called to grow and explore new things for any reason, that to make that, just to show that it's possible and that it is inspiring and that it is fulfilling, even when you don't know how it's going to sort out or end up. It's like, I just think it's such a contribution to share that stuff.
Thanks. You know,
Yeah.
I think it's important to vocalize that it's terrifying. You know,
That it's what?
it's terrifying.
Yeah.
For me, I'm lost and feel like I don't have any traction, and I feel like I don't know direction, and I have to remind myself to just chew the bite that's in my mouth, you know, like take one step at a time, you know, and really keep things small and be like, okay, well, just get one thing on the list done today, you know, and maybe it isn't something that contributes to the end goal in the bigger picture, but it kept me working on the project. And I definitely feel let's say exact same way you were just describing. Like when I took my step away from my very comfortable career, I was forced to do so in some ways. Physically, I suffered an injury, but it was almost as if that injury was something I had asked for,
Right.
because I could stand staying this course forever, you know, like change is something that is where we grow. And if we do the same thing eternally, we stagnate, you know, and we no longer have new experiences and new adaptations because of the new experiences. So it's been a very, I mean, very similar course to yourself. I was quite lost for quite a while, trying to get my ground, trying to get my feet under me to be able to express, to feel confident with where I am or where I'm going. And a lot of questions, you know, it's very, that digging down inside yourself and being like, what do I really want to do? You know, like what's next? What's important to me? What do I care about? Because it's starting to get to that point in life where, for me, the thing that I truly cared about before was skydiving. That was what I felt impassioned to do.
Yep.
And when that waned and it was no longer something I wanted to pursue with all my intention, with all my energy, then I'm like, well, where do I want to put my energy now? Do I let it fizzle out and divide it up amongst all kinds of different things, or do I direct it towards a new project of some time? And last year I tried a project and had to shut it down. Got about 4 or 5 months in and realized it didn't look like it was going to be successful, based on all the numbers. And this is a huge learning curve, is to go, okay, here's the goal and here's where we're coming in. Let's just do this, because that's not going to work.
And that's equally fair. That's all part of the process, the bigger picture process, as of course, you know. Yeah. It's so true though, that feeling of being lost, and it's so hard to know inside of that feeling lost that it is building to something new and good, that it is good in itself. Like without that deep breakdown, without the pain point of losing a fire for the thing that had the fire for so long, then you aren't ever really motivated to have those new experiences, like you said. And it sucks, like in the sense that it's painful as fuck to feel lost and unsure and terrified and like, oh God. I mean, for me, I for a long time, I had my life coaching success because I have fire for the way that I help people now as a life coach. I love it, love it, love it. I'm deeply passionate about it. I'm directed in that way. I formerly had entangled the two as well. So once I was like, oh, I can take a break from skydiving. I don't have to actively skydive all the time. That's cool. Like if I don't want to, that's fine. You know, it's physically rigorous. Like I just kind of want to take a break. Like I'm just don't want to go jump every weekend anymore. You know, I want to go and do fun stuff that feel connected to the things that I care about, which are community, helping new jumpers, like having fun, genuine fun and community. Anyway, I had an underlying fear that I had that took a while to work out, a long time to work out, where I was like, oh, if I remove myself in and I'm not actively skydiving regularly, my life coaching business will certainly fail, you know? And so like I had all this, like my future hopes and dreams attached, as we do. And so once I was able to disentangle that, I was able to re-embrace my love of skydiving and this type of stuff. I'm like, holy shit, I can help the skydiving community in a new way. Like I don't need, you know, like that, this idea of doing this type of stuff and creating education for people and community, that just inspires me to no end, because it makes me go, oh, I don't have to jettison like the entirety of my life before now, that it's really just like, no, it's there. It's this beautiful thing. And it supports this next level of, or next pursuit of my life.
Yeah, I completely get you. You know, it's a very, very, we're mirroring each other in a lot of ways. I'm really grateful for making when I decided to give you a call and see if you wanted to do something together, I was like, I just need somebody else to help motivate and just spur conversation. And really that's it. Like, let's just start talking. And so that's what we're doing, is just talking, you know? And what we do in life is just share our thoughts and learn to listen, you know, and learn to be present and available to hearing other people go through the same path, you know. And if I hear you saying all the same things that I'm going through for the last few years, I'm like, oh, that's so reassuring, because I
Yeah.
feel the exact same things. And, you know, and maybe if we have some listeners that have the exact same experience where they're like, well, I had the same thing I was just struggling with for the last couple of years. And look, these people are people that I would look up to for their, you know, expertise in an area that I'm familiar with, and they're going through this. And I just had this same identical role reversal with one of my students this past weekend. He's a beginner skydiver, you know, he's got a couple hundred jumps, and he's working his way through all the, you know, the challenges of learning a new environment and new experience. And we did a role reverse, and he became my scuba instructor for I had scuba and paragliding and rock climbing all on the back burners because I prioritized skydiving for so long.
Right.
And so I'm finally getting around to get my scuba rating. And so here I am on my, you know, my first dive, you know, out of the pool, and doing the first set of drills, taking the mask off, you know, and then and when I went to take the mask on, I got the bubbles in my nose, and I got a fear response, you know, and all of a sudden I get the, you know, panic, you know, and I feel the onset, you know, and I feel the like this, like, oh gosh, I'm freaking out. My body wants to go to the surface because I think that's where the air is, you know, and I know that that's not what I'm supposed to do, but the body wants to do that, you know. The body feels like I'm familiar with air being outside of the water. So I have all this experience that's told me for the last 44 years that if I want to breathe, I have to be above the surface of the water.
Right.
It's a very similar context to what we're going through. It's like, okay, if I want to be successful, I have to be in my environment that I'm well practiced at.
Totally.
Do things that I already know how to do.
Right.
I have to put myself on top of a pool of experience and knowledge and, you know, connections and all these, you know, things that I've got to shore me up. But the reality is that with the technology of a scuba system, I don't have to go to the surface. I can breathe right here. My air is right here.
Right.
You know? And so I just have to laugh a little bit at the ridiculousness of the fear,
right,
and recognize that I have air coming in my mouth right now. I don't need to be afraid of not having air because I have air. And, you know, for my student who was my instructor in this role, it was really empowering because I can see the developmental learning for him. The next time that we do a day of coaching, he feels so much better about making mistakes, being afraid, fumbling, because he can see that his, you know, world champion coach and mentor fumbles and is afraid and struggles and has the same problems that he has, and that we're all the same. There's no difference, you know. It's just, you just put yourself into a situation that you're not as practiced at, and you play the wrong chord, you know, you trip instead of dance, you know. And
I love that you just said dance, because that's one of the things that I said for myself. Like, once I had time, I've always been called to partner dancing. And so I totally was like, yes, I finally have time and desire and motivation to learn to dance. So I've been learning how to do West Coast swing.
It just went on my list.
And so, and it's the same experience for me, like, because I'm not a world champion, like, just for people watching, my skydiving experience, but I'm good, I'm great, don't worry, I'm not disparaging myself or my skill.
People know you.
Exactly.
They do.
Boom. 2002 predicted. Oh my God. But my point is that, like, I think a big part of, like, my success in the sport of skydiving is that sort of leadership and community, like running events and being willing and welcoming people and being socially just very open and wanting to connect with people and love people, like love I've always said love and hilarity are the two most important things in life in that order, right? Like, and I still fucking buy into that and believe in it and live by it. So I'm going to learn to dance, and I'm going to these new classes, group classes where you don't need to have a partner. You can go and you're just learning the skill set. And I've already written about this as well. I pretty much write about my life real time in the column, but I totally recognize the social anxiety come up, you know, like being the newbie in the community, doing the thing, wanting, you know, it was less like I want to be a perfect dancer. I didn't really have that fear. Like, I'm totally cool. I'm like learning and I'm embracing that I'm a newbie process. For me, it was more like, oh, I just feel a little bit socially nervous. Like, so it's just, and I had to laugh at that because I'm like, oh. And so once I recognize it, and like you said, bring it into the light, it sort of dissolves away for the most part. But pretty much it comes back up. Each time I go there, I'm like, okay, I'm less and less nervous socially to see people and stuff like that, and less nervous as a new dancer as well. Like, okay, I'm learning, I'm getting better, I see progress. And, you know, it's up and down, of course. I always say it's an ascending sine wave. Because like some dance classes, I'll show up and I'll be like, feel totally awkward and just want to not be seen. And I don't want to look at myself in the mirror or have anyone else see me or whatever. And then other nights I'm feeling very vibrant and very open, and I dance really, really well. So I think that's just so present in so many.
I was going to say the exact same thing earlier. You know, I was listening to something else you were saying, and I was feeling it when it comes to the goal setting or the progress towards a goal. You know, for me, there's days when I'm like, I feel utterly confident. I'm like, yes, I'm doing the right thing. I know that the pieces that I'm going now towards the action that I want to go in, I feel successful with my decisions. I feel confident with them. They feel productive. I feel value in it, and
Right.
everything's on the positive stroke. And you're
Yeah.
dead on with the sine wave analogy, because other days it feels like a dead end, and it feels like there's nothing working and everything is negative, and there's no difference. The only difference is me, right? I've sat down at the same set of equipment with the same set of tools, the same set of goals, the same amount of experience.
Yep.
Everything is the same, except the energy, the phase that I'm in is in one that's non-creative, that's non-productive. And I think it's very valuable for us to become self-aware of our phases. And so when I recognize that I'm pushing the buttons and the keys and I'm trying to make something work and it sounds terrible to me,
Right.
then I should stop. I should just go do something else. And what I generally have started doing for the last few years is when I feel that negative energy, I'll walk away and I'll go do one of the other practices that I have. I'll do yoga, or I'll go ride my bike, or get out of this space and change my frequency from one of stagnation to one of movement, so that I'm physically moving around and changing my environment, and changing my activity level, changing my stimulus level, and let energy come in through this interaction with nature and with self, and instead of me trying to put it out, you know, I need to be refueled as well.
Yeah, so true. It's that ascending sine wave is so apparent in every bit of my life. Like, I'm grateful that I have more awareness of that now, because entrepreneurially, like, people are like, oh, living the dream in that way, like you work for yourself, fuck yeah. And I'm like, yeah, totally fuck yeah. And if you think that there aren't days where I'm like, oh God, let me just get a job, you're wrong. You know, like constantly creating and being out there. It's difficult, you know, just like anything of value, there's difficulty in that pursuit. And it's funny, I can also look back in skydiving and go, okay, I can see the sine wave, and it can be small, it can be big, but it's always ascending when we persevere through those dips, you know. And that's a question too, is not everything is a dip to persevere through. You pointed to something that I think is really valuable. And this is a book written by Seth Godin. It's called The Dip, where it's talks about strategic quitting. So you had this experience where you're like, oh, I'm doing this thing and I see the numbers and the goal is just not, and your gut told you it's like, this is something I'd like to not pursue anymore. That is totally just as valid as saying, oh, I'm going to fucking muscle through this torturous period because I believe, right? So there's a distinction between like which is which. And that's, I think, where most people get stuck is they're like, I don't know which one it is. Do I quit or do I keep going? Is this the sine wave where we ascend?
So I went through this weekend, right? I did my 2 days in the pool and I got into the open water and I did the dive, and when I came out of the water, I was sitting there by myself later and I'm like, maybe I don't want to go on the ocean tomorrow. Maybe I don't need to do this, you know, and I have the thought because I'm didn't like the feeling of fear. I didn't like the feeling of panic. I didn't like that feeling of not being in control of my own self, of my body, you know? And I had the thought go bloop, and it bubbled up into my consciousness of maybe I'll just tell my instructor, I don't feel like doing this. Let's just cancel and I don't have to do it.
Yeah.
And I heard myself think it, right? I heard the thought
Yeah.
and I'm like, I've been looking forward to this for years and I've finally come around to doing it. And I have one little hurdle where I have a little bit of feeling that I'm not comfortable with. And now I'm thinking about quitting. And I've seen my students in my classroom do this time and time again. I've seen fellow competitors, because if you grab a hold of that and you make that your exit route, your escape route, then you send the sine wave downhill, right? You are not ascending anymore. You take it and you redirect it, and it's now going to hit the bottom and it's done. It's over.
Right.
You know, you quit that endeavor. And I'm a huge fan of quitting. Like I advocate quitting, but quit things that don't serve you.
Absolutely.
Quit things that aren't offering or building you or serving you in the bigger picture, and stay the route with the things that challenge you, that make it that you have a struggle with, that you have to learn to overcome. You know, it's a powerful thing to know the difference between when to stay the course for something that you're afraid of, or when to quit because it's something that's just not of value to you. It's not bringing you anything.
And that's a skill set, I think, to develop. And I think it's always difficult in the sense that every choice and situation we are facing is always totally new. It might have the feeling and the air and the kind of similar nature of something we've experienced in the past, but it's always brand new. So it's totally understandable, like for me to validate like people, if they're listening to this and they find themselves like, oh, well, Mel and Jay, they're like fucking totally just deciding and they're figuring it out, intuition or fear. Perfect. I'm going to decide. It's not like that. And it's so understandable to have those, like, to have to really consider it and look at and discern, like, and ask ourselves, is this my intuition or is this fear? And sometimes we don't know. And sometimes we fuck up and we choose in the direction of fear and we learn because of it. So it's always good. Like, that's why when I say ascending sine wave, I mean that in the sense that the direction is always theoretically up. You know what I mean? Like, even when we, fuck up or make a choice that isn't in alignment with our fear, we will get results from that choice that ideally will educate us that, oh, that was fear. Now I know more for the next time. And so that is like, for people to kind of take off the magnifying glass of self-judgment when they do make a choice and that's directed by fear, that it's not to give people, like, to get them off the hook, for being strong in the face of fear, but just to allow for that we're all trying to figure it out all the time. And it's not always an easy choice.
Yeah. You hit on something right there that's really, really key. I think it's an area that we can all use to help empower our self-confidence in recognizing where our true path lies. And you said intuition. It's that instinct. It's the soul talking. It's this part of the inner knowing, the true self. And it's relevant when you're young, right? It's kind of it's your main voice. And
Yeah.
as you mature, it gets quieted by all the other voices around you, or it gets muffled because there's
Sure.
so much noise. And then you have these different parts of self that are trying to make decisions for like all the aspects in your life and the experiences, the relationships, everything that's happening. And so instinct is an incredibly powerful thing. And here's my most recent example for people to have some relationship to identify. I was packing a cooler. I'm loading it up with stuff for lunch, some snacks, I'm throwing things in there. And I think I should bring my French press and I should throw the coffee in there. And then I'm like, nah, don't do that, you know? And then again, while I'm loading everything up, I think I should bring my French press. I should bring and then something about me says, no, you're not going to need it. Don't do that. Right. And then I get there and I'm like, I should have brought my French press. There's no coffee. There's no way. But I doubted that intuition. That's intuition. That's intuition.
So is.
That's the something in my voice, in my head said, bring the coffee, you know?
Love it.
And so all I had to do was put it in the cooler. And these are not big life decisions. These are little things, right? These are recognizing a feeling that intuition is a feeling. You know, it's not like somebody grabs you by the gut and goes, listen to me.
Right.
You know, you have to have this direction in your life.
Yes.
I'm talking about having my coffee with me or not, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And when you get more and more attuned to the subtleties and picking up on them. So the way that I've learned that was my intuition is when I was there and there was no coffee, but I heard myself say, bring coffee.
Mm-hmm.
And so you get in this habit. Now, when I go to drop my keys on the table and I go, that's not where you keep your keys. Don't put them there. That's my intuition telling me to put them where I keep them so that I can find them the next time I'm looking for them. And
Yes.
it's these little tiny voices. They're not big, you know? And usually the one that yells is not intuition, it's fear.
Oh, love that.
Right?
It's such a strong, I'm so glad you brought that up, because that's the thing. Like we talk about, learn to read your intuition. Well, how the fuck do we do that? You know, like people might be going like, well, yeah, it's good for you to say, but how, like help. And that is so right on that. Like our typical lenses that we build up from society, from experience, from, you know, whatever thoughts that come in and then become the lenses that we wear that we don't even see anymore because they're over our eyeballs and they're stacked. Those can easily, like, if we don't sort of make it intentionally aim to look for those tiny little voices in those little French press type situations, that's how we start to cultivate an awareness of the intuitive voice. I completely agree. I'm totally with you on that.
It's very much a practice, you know. Again, I'm going to refer to my AT experience. It was a very a good way to slow down time. It was a period in my life that allowed for a very simplistic life. Life involves walking. It involves finding a good place to camp and feeding yourself and making sure you have water and not getting lost. It's a really, like, this is it. Like, you get up, you eat, you drink, and you walk, and then you find a place to lay down and sleep, and you eat, you drink, and you walk, and you sleep.
Right.
And so your decision becomes very simplistic. Your level of self-awareness gets down to like root being. Like, what do I need to ensure my own safety, my own security, and my own well-being, and to meet my goal to stay this path? And a simple example is this, somewhere around, say, 4 or 5 o'clock in a day, you start thinking, I need to find a place to camp. And the instinct says, don't worry, there's a place a little ways up the way. You're going to find a really good spot. You're going to get this amazing view of like a mountaintop looking at sunset, or you'll find a spot by a lake. But then you walk past a spot that would work. you know, and your fear is like, well, maybe you should just set up right here because
Right.
this will do. This is good enough, you
Right.
know?
Right.
And because it's good enough and it's right there and it's now and it's accessible, that I think, well, okay, maybe I'll settle. Maybe
Yes.
I'll take the easy way out and I'll just stop and take this, and I'll stop an hour or two before I plan because here's something now I can count on it. It's reliable. It's known.
Yep.
Right?
It's known.
And it's known. It exists. And I don't have to work hard for it. I don't have to wonder or go on the path of maybe, you know.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the number of times when I stopped and looked at this spot and I went, yep, that would be a perfect camp spot if all I cared about was finding a spot to camp. But you know what? If I go for another hour or two, I might find something amazing. And
So
the
true.
number of times where I walk up to a beachside camping spot or a cliff overlook that has the most epic spot to camp, and you're like, thank God I persevered and
Oh,
trusted my instinct, because I'd look at the spot and I go, oh, that's not the spot. And I think a lot of us do this with our lives.
yes.
We take a look at our life and we go, okay, I really want to be this. I want to do things that I've seen others do. I want to meet these examples or, set goals for myself. And you go, yeah, but I have this job right here and this
Yeah.
apartment and this kind of known knowns and easy outs. And all I have to do, you know what? Let's just put the dreams on the back burner.
Yeah.
And we'll just settle in right here where everything's comfy and I don't have to be afraid that it's not going to show up.
Yep.
And, oh, okay, cool. And now I'm content with my mediocrity.
I know. Oh man, it's so tough because if we talk about how and what is like using or applying courage look like, it's those little moments too.
Yeah.
When we read or hear the intuition, then I think in those moments does require a little bit of courage, just a touch to continue down the path to the amazing spot. Like I can see this in my work, like my life coaching work, in terms of like creating something or working with a certain person, or you know what I mean? Like it's like there's lots of times when this type of work can feel very isolating and has felt very isolating to me in getting to this stage of my career as this life coach type person. And I've had many instances where it's the intuition around working with a certain person or whatever was like, well, and it wasn't really on point. And so, but my sort of loneliness or whatever desire to connect because my life circumstances had me in that type of place, like would have me go, well, and it would draw you or direct you toward that settling versus listening to the gut and having a little bit of courage to have faith. And that's the thing, like faith in that is a bit of courage. I feel like it takes a little bit of courage to say, no, this actually doesn't feel right to me. I'm going to wait a little longer, Yeah.
It's hard, eh?
It's tough.
It's hard when you don't know for sure that there's better ahead.
Yeah.
You're just going off of a feeling.
Yeah.
There may be something better. And if I just stay down this road and just keep going on a completely unknown,
yeah,
I will. And maybe you don't find something better just yet, but the next day you do.
Yeah. And it's so funny because there's a big part of me too that's like, oh, I want to say yes to positive opportunity. Like there's a big part of me that's like, am I an ungrateful jerk because I'm like waiting, for something else? So there's a part of that comes up for me too sometimes, but not really. It's more like that, I think, is another thing of like, oh, because I don't buy into like, oh, just like wait for something better all the time. Like that is not what we're saying.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? What we're saying is reading intuition in terms of what's right for us uniquely, which I think is different. There's a distinction there as well.
Yeah. I'm going to share today's epiphany. I got up this morning knowing that we were going to start today with our series, and I'm very excited to get, moving on this new project, and not knowing where it's going is really fun. Actually, I'm like, cool, let's just let it grow and morph and see how things develop. And I was preparing my breakfast, and I like to eat a healthy breakfast in the morning. I'm a breakfast guy. And I was making oatmeal and I got some steel cut oats, which I love. I typically get the really like nice ones, organic, you know, they take like 20 minutes or half an hour to prepare or whatever. But this time I grabbed some quick prepare ones off the shelf, you know, and they're like, they take 5 to 7 minutes. And as I'm making them, I'm like, oh yeah, I know exactly what I'm doing right now. It's like pour boiling water and it's instant, right?
Yeah.
And so with instant, you get a certain result. It's cheap and effective. It's done right now, and it's kind of crap. It's not that good, you know. It's just not delicious. It's not amazing, but it's here. It's right now. It's available. It's instant gratification.
Yeah.
And then there's where I went for today, which was I'll put a little effort into it. You know, I'll go for the 5 to 7 minute preparation, and with a small amount of effort, I get a marginal improvement in the quality of my meal, right? And I'm like, the whole time I'm making it, I'm like, I should have got the ones that take half an hour to make, because they're so much better, you know? Because you put in the time, you put in the energy, I have to be patient. I have to stay the course. I have to be willing to give up that much of my life. 30 minutes to prepare oatmeal in the morning is a big commitment when you have a lot you want to do in your life.
Exactly.
You know? But that oatmeal is so much better.
The metaphors in life are very, very rich. Well, my friend, I say we cut it there, because we could obviously go on, and that's why I think we agreed and both were, you know, on and agreeing with the multiple session type thing, because there is just so much here. There's so much value.
And I just I just added more things to a list that we can talk about. I'm going to
thank you so much. This is awesome.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
I mean, for people watching, like, if you have things that you want us to explore, and I'm always open to feedback and always open for connection. So yeah, let's hear it. And I'm so excited. Yay.
Looking forward to the next one.
Thank you everyone for listening and being a part of the Trust the Journey family. Episode 1 in the books. Woo! Please tweet, share, post, email, whatever, however you are inspired, or with anyone you think this show might help.
Join us next time for episode 2, where we'll be talking about fear, choices, deciding through those feelings, and how walking the Appalachian Trail is a pretty good metaphor on the topic.
Thank you guys all truly for being with us. We love you. Like, legit, we love you. And remember, keep laughing, keep loving, and keep trusting the journey.